Well, well, well. Here we are for Leaf Talk. Yes, he's Aaron William Freeland. I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. And of course, this is Leaf Talk. Let's see. The Leafs played their first game, Aaron. You were there. Please share with us the ambiance that you found yourself in.
It was different, of course, than any regular season game that I've been to. I'm
So it
glad
wasn't
to
a
report,
regular season game. Maybe
thank
that.
goodness. Had it been exactly like every single other regular season game that I've been to, I would be concerned. Last time I actually saw a Maple Leafs playoff game was a couple of years pre-COVID, actually, believe it or not. Last time I went, this time was absolutely electric. We got our own little towels to wave. You know, the music was cranked extra loud. The pre-show was extra nice, and then they dropped the puck, and things got even better.
It only took 30 seconds for them to get better.
Exactly, 33 seconds in, Nylander from Pacioretty and Jake McCabe pots the goal. Crowd goes absolutely ballistic, and at that point, I think people sort of realized we're in for a really interesting ride tonight.
Absolutely.
You know, Nylander scores that goal, and then at the 6:38 mark, or 6 minutes and 5 seconds later, Max Domi got a phantom penalty for cross-checking Brad Marchand. I don't know how it happened. I watched the replays. I didn't see the shaft of Domi's stick anywhere near Bradley, but the referee apparently thought that Domi skating over and smiling at Brad was enough to put him in the box for 2 minutes. So there was that.
That was after the Leafs took the lead.
Yes, that was after the first goal. So, I'm not sure where this came from, but apparently Max Domi is not to be trusted, and Brad Marchand has apparently signed more than enough sticks for Chris Rooney and Graham Skilder. Interestingly enough, side note, going back to the last time the Leafs played the Panthers in the playoffs, Graham Skilder was also one of the officials when Sam Bennett gave Matthew Nyes a concussion during the first game of the series that knocked him out for the remainder of the playoffs. So there's a little bit of history repeating itself here in that the same Sam Bennett, who also coincidentally didn't get a penalty called against him in 2023, ran into Anthony Stolarz in the crease.
Oh, that, yeah.
Yeah. So, a little bit of full circle stuff going on here. In neither case was he assessed a penalty.
Okay. Now, I'm not claiming corruption. I'm not saying that Daddy Campbell, Gregory Campbell's dad, Colin, Gregory Campbell works for the Florida Panthers, as did George Peros at one time. He was a player for that team. And what we know is what became public was that Mr. Campbell, the dad, will protect and favor his son and use his position to influence others to ensure that his son is treated better than he was being treated. And you may all remember there was an email that Mr. Campbell sent because his son was being punished for a high stick, coincidentally against the present assistant coach, Mark Savard. And there was an email sent where he basically told the Department of Safety that was making the decision that they should be a little more lenient on his son. So am I saying that this kind of behavior is definitely happening with Florida right now because of the situation? Am I saying that this is actually going on, like this same exact thing? No, not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is, it happens once. What's to stop it from happening again?
Well, I just like to get it out there, Frank. From my part, I am not alleging a conspiracy of any sort. I am simply saying that on ice official number 24, Graham Skilder, appears to be bad at his job. That's all I'm saying. Nothing more, nothing less. There is no conspiracy here. I'm sure that the fact that Brad Marchand goes out of his way to sign memorabilia for on ice officials has nothing to do with how they perceive the game. I'm just saying that both Chris Rooney and Graham Skilder are, for lack of a better term, bad.
Were you aware 2 years ago when Nyes was in game 1 of the series against Florida, when Bennett sumo wrestlered him or WWF wrestled him to the ground and ground his head into the ice? You know the 2 referees that night?
I believe one of them was Graham Skilder.
I understand both of them were the same referees.
I don't know if that makes it better or worse, but at this point here, now we have a very good impression of what will and won't get called.
Hang on now, because all the facts aren't in yet. So you talked about the Domi penalty. The Domi penalty was basically Domi skated up, didn't cross-check Bradley.
No.
But what he did was he had his arms in his stick in it's sort of like kissing his same positioning. Like they're both the same way. They both had their sticks and they were like this. There was no real hitting, right?
They double knuckle bumped. It was a gesture of affection.
Basically. And there wasn't real a hefty thing. But in that same game, a goalie gets elbowed in the head. There's no penalty. In the same game, in between whistles, Mitch Marner's minding his own business in the corner, and a certain, not to mention names, Chuck, not to mention names, cross-checks him in the back, slashes him in the back of the leg, and pokes him with his stick, and nary a call.
Interestingly enough, I believe that did actually happen after the final whistle. So technically the game was over, which means that the referee's jurisdiction had ended. However, the fact that Kachuk tried very openly to cowbell Mitch Marner so shortly after the birth of his son indicates that he's not interested in the Marner family line continuing. So,
hang on. I disagree with that statement because the league has a rule that any funny business that happens at the end of the game, I mean, they even have it in the last minute. If some funny business goes on in the last minute, you end up with a little more punishment than you would have if you do it with 10 minutes left in the game. A. B, they don't allow stuff to happen before the game starts or after the game ends. There is basically it becomes a serious issue that the league steps in now instead of the referees. You're right, it's probably out of the referees' hands, but nothing came from it. And I just wonder if the Leafs bothered to send that video and if they got a response from the league basically saying something to the effect of, well, unfortunately, we got an email from Colin Campbell. And he said, we need to be a little gentler with his son's team. I'm being facetious here, and I'm half kidding. And by half kidding, I mean, the question is there. How do you have, and the moment that happened a few years ago, the first time we heard about this email, the fact that Colin Campbell was still in the National Hockey League under those circumstances, that kind of nepotism and that kind of trying to influence the officiating, if a league had a moral standard of any kind, Colin Campbell would not be in the position that he still remains in. And the other thing is, it makes one wonder how many skeletons he has in the closet that he can pull out in the event that something not so nice happens to him as an employee of the National Hockey League. It's one of those things that raises those questions, like why does somebody who breaks the rules in that way and breaks a moral standard still be a part, of of the league. And why is it that those penalty calls are irrelevant that should have been calls? Why are they irrelevant under the circumstances of the tight way they called the game? That's the part that I don't argue with them trying to keep things on under wraps with Domi, basically saying, look, you're trying to start something, we're taking you off. I
Like
understand,
Brad Marchand doesn't.
but my point is the moment they send Domi out, then that means that they've set a standard. So it's not about whether you actually do something illegal. If you do something that threatens to be, that's the standard they created with that penalty. If it threatens to be illegal, then you get a penalty. I'm not sure, but I think what happened to Stolarz was at the very least a threat to do something illegal. Tkachuk on Marner 3 times did 3 things that go past, it goes past that bar to threatening to do something illegal. And none of those acts, that's 4 of them I count, were penalized. And you can call me a homer if you like, and I won't drag Aaron into what I'm saying right now, and he'll speak for himself. But what I can say is, here's what has to happen, Aaron. The Leafs have to play the game as if they're shorthanded at all times. That there's another uniform there that just lacks the Florida emblem. It's called the pinstripes. Those stripes on the ice are not concerned about their safety or good health. So what they have to do is 2 things. Do whatever they can to protect their health, protect each other's health, and do the best they can to beat that team. Not the crap out of them, but beat the Florida Panthers knowing they are up against it. What a great win that was last night, considering the officiating. And imagine what a great win it'll be in the next game if they can do it, knowing full well it's an uphill battle, and it could be this next game. Different referees, maybe they'll have a different attitude. And if they can beat the referees and Florida, boy, Leaf fans are going to be very proud of this team.
Yeah, and here's the thing. I have the distinctly uneasy feeling that those penalties weren't called because when they occurred, basically it was even in penalties already. Both Toronto and Florida had already received by that point 3 penalties each. Sam Bennett went on to get a penalty at 5:02 of the 3rd period for hooking, but that was directly in front of the referee, directly in his line of sight, and there was no way he could not call it after having allowed Bennett to go very hard to the net with the puck. Now, Sam Bennett did say in a press conference today that when he found out that Stolarz had been taken to the hospital, he did contact him, reach out, and try to say, hey, buddy, I wasn't trying to run you over, because they did win a Stanley Cup together in Florida.
We're
most
friends.
recently as last year, and
We're friends.
But at the same time, it's like, yeah, but buddy, if you treat me like that and I'm a friend.
So Aaron, you don't even have to go there. I will finish this. I will add to your topic. Have you ever seen 2 brothers that play on opposite teams?
I'm just saying.
And I'm just adding. adding. I mean, being a friend does not qualify as an excuse to suggest I would never do anything to hurt you. I've seen a couple of brothers in the history of hockey go after each other, and it seems almost worse than any other battle. I mean, sibling rivalry can be really interesting. And as far as friends are concerned, all one has to look at is when the game ended between Ottawa and Toronto, and when the series ended, I should rephrase, when the series ended with Ottawa and Toronto and every other series. The tradition of Canadian sportsmanship exists today, where the losers and the winners shake hands. They don't punch each other out. They shake hands, smile, and it's all over. My point being, and it's, I think, the same point you'll agree with, which is when the puck gets dropped and there's something at stake on the ice, You're going to do whatever it takes to win. The only question is, are you going to stay between the lines? Are you going to ride the line and then every so often just give a little go to the other line, right? That's the question. It's not a question of Bennett being a dirty player, because that's not the question here. The question is, did he do something worth being penalized for? I say check. He definitely did that, because if it wasn't an elbow to the head and the concussion that he caused, it was interference, because he skated into a goaltender who's in his crease, and there was no puck in the crease.
Yeah, there are a certain amount of chuds out there as well who are clinging to a tweet by a doctor explaining how shake works, which is a sudden head thingamajigger after a kinetic event.
Okay.
Claiming that what actually concussed Stolarz was not the hit, but instead a shot that he took off the helmet, which knocked one of his straps loose a couple of minutes before that.
All right.
I am not saying it's impossible, but I am saying that the additional hit to the head, if Stolarz wasn't concussed already or wasn't already feeling the effects, definitely didn't help.
All right. I'm going to take it a step further, and I'm going to try and use some logic here in the hopes that it sounds logical. Two things. We learned from a couple of goaltenders last night that they both agreed. They were both nodding their heads saying a shot here does not have the same impact as a shot here.
No.
And I'm going to give you the reasoning that they didn't mention. This contact here, the mask is made to absorb the puck hitting that part of the mask. The unfortunate thing is the side of the mask is like that. So the transmission of an elbow to the side of the head, the mask does not have the same reduction feature of contact impact on the side as it does on the front. And my final point is that being a football fan and having gone through those years of concussions, which also were affected in hockey, I learned concussion 101 says contact this way is far more dangerous than contact this way. When the brain shakes this way, the impact on the brain and its function is far more severe, which means less contact, just as much damage this way as there is this way. So that's why it's all BS. Like, we're not stupid. We've been through this. Anybody who pays attention has heard what makes concussions dangerous.
Also, the 6-ounce rubber puck traveling at, say, 90 miles an hour, while it does impart a great amount of kinetic force, doesn't impart nearly the amount of kinetic energy that a 225-pound player skating at 15 to 20 miles an hour does from the side.
With elbow or fist extended.
Yep, and the fact that those elbow pads are basically ballistic armor at this point. The impact from that can be just as great, if not greater, than getting smacked in the noggin with a 5.5 to 6 ounce or 155 to 170 gram puck. I as a goalie myself, and as the person who's gone through several concussions, you're far more likely to get concussed by somebody running into you from the side while taking the puck to the net than you are by a shot off the front of the mask, which is designed to take impacts from the front.
Now, and I promise this is the final comment on this. You can do a test at home for those of you that are watching, or you can share it with other people. Here's the test. Nod your head as hard as you do turning your head. And ask yourself, how do I feel when I do this as opposed to when I do this? Check out how you feel when you do that. Do you feel like you're losing a little bit of, you feel almost like you're going to pass out, right? You're almost losing that's the whole point. When your head turns like this, the impact of your head turning like that is far more causes more effect than this way. Do I know why? No. Do I understand why? No. Have I heard doctors talk about it and brain
Yes.
scientists talk about it and explain it? You know, they have. Do I understand the brain and all that stuff? But I've heard the people talk about it because it was a very big issue. And for me, when covering the Canadian Football League, it became an issue that we really needed to understand. And an empathetic person such as myself wants to understand the damage that could happen to athletes, not because of them, Aaron, it's because of the children that play. That's the reason why I care. And that's the reason why I care. A play like that basically will be repeated in hockey games seen soon after. Young children will once they're told that's an okay play, they will emulate it because they think it's okay. That's why it isn't.
Lost in all of this kerfuffle is actually a new record that was set. Morgan Riley is actually now the leadingest. Yeah, that's a word.
Goal scorer.
The leadingest goal scorer amongst defensemen. He's got 14 goals now. He
Ian
just
Turnbull?
passed Ian
Turnbull he passed?
Yeah, and Boreas Salming is in third with 12. So congratulations to Morgan on that.
Well, this is why, you know, when we talk about the Leafs, and I always say that this is the best batch of players the Leafs have had, you know, in almost 50 years. But I keep having to remind myself, and I'm sorry if I remind other people, that's a low bar. With the Leafs, that's a low bar. Just like this is the first team in how many years, or the first team in so many years, second team in so many years to finish first in their division.
And that's still mind-blowing to me that they haven't finished first in all of the years that they've been in the league. And the fact that
their incompetence under Harold Ballard, it speaks to that. That's what it's all about. You know, that's the Leafs have been not a very good franchise. They went dozens of years not making the playoffs. They just haven't been that good a team. So when we sit here and poo-poo the fact that they can't win in the playoffs, you know, that there's justification for that frustration for Leaf fans. But let's not forget, as you know, Leaf fans should keep in mind the kind of entertainment this Leaf team has brought them during the season. I know that's fool's gold, but still, you know, the Leafs in their greatest years of those Stanley Cups that they won were always finishing fourth or third or second and then winning the cup, not finishing first. That was Montreal, Detroit doing that. And the Rangers in Boston were always on the bottom. See, that's what I know when we grew up. That's how the 6-team NHL was: Bruins and Rangers at the bottom, and Detroit and Montreal fighting for first. And that's basically how it went.
I think the most frustrating thing for me growing up during the Ballard era, as I did, was that when 21 teams made the playoffs, the Leafs somehow managed to find themselves in like 16 of 21 teams make the playoffs, and we're in 17th.
The best thing that, you know, for those that lived through that era, what I can say is the nicest thing about living in that era was playing Pittsburgh when they were first overall and the Leafs were 16th and would beat them in the playoffs. I don't know if you remember those days.
I do occasionally remember that.
Islanders, the Leafs and the Islanders, the Leafs and the Penguins. Who else did the Leafs? I don't think they ever did it to Montreal. But yeah, they've never been a team to finish first. They've never had a real good, you know, good regular season. And their teams were essentially built for the playoffs. So, you know, that's what it is. So this game, the Leafs won barely. And I want to make sure before we go, I got to tell you, Matthew Nyes has been the best performer for the Maple Leafs in this playoff year.
He absolutely has been. Sorry, I just something tweaked in my head when we were talking about teams that finished in first and the Leafs winning against them. Did you realize 2016-17 was the first time the Leafs and Capitals had ever met in the playoffs?
Sure.
And it's mainly because at the same time that the Capitals were terrible when they first joined the league. The Leafs were just as bad.
They sat beside each other outside the playoffs.
Yep.
Yeah. No,
Crazy
Matthew Nyes is the prototypical. He is a power forward. He has a lot of power, and I'm not saying I hope it happens, but it wouldn't surprise me if Bennett was called on to perform the ceremonial fight after injuring a player and taking, basically the honor fight. I call it the honor fight. When a player does something not nice to another player and the team goes, okay, we got some business to do. Here's what I'm going to suggest about Bennett. He'll turn tail and run. Unless the Leafs turn their back when they're talking to him, then maybe possibly he might enter into a little bit of a situation.
Look, my last thoughts on this are as follows. If you do decide that you want to take revenge on Bennett, okay, who comes out of the lineup to put Ryan Reeves in? And is Ryan Reeves game ready?
No, I don't think the Leafs should do that, because that would be tipping the hand.
Mm-hmm.
I think the best case scenario here is, like I said, I would like to see Nyes do it, only for one reason, because of what happened 2 years ago. Only for that reason. And I have faith in that southpaw, because we know now he's a southpaw, which makes him dangerous in regular fighting standards. And if not him, Domi, because Domi's smaller than Bennett. And nothing like a beating from a smaller guy. Oh, yeah, he kind of has it in his genes. I seem to remember he had a father who was always a half a foot shorter than everybody else he fought. And that was impressive. And I think that would be an impressive fight that, I'm telling you, Florida does not want to see that happen, because the emotional uplift with Ty Domi taking him and giving him a little bit of a lesson on what it's like to fight somebody or try to hurt somebody face to face, not when they're not looking or expecting it.
At the end of the day, I would like to see the Leafs play their game.
And that's what all we want. That's all. Yeah, that's all we should want.
I don't want them revenge taking. I don't want them looking to run the goalie. I may joke about putting Ryan Reeves in the lineup to jump Sergei Bobrovsky while he's on the bench, but at the same time, that's not the kind of hockey that you want to see.
Glad you're saying you're kidding.
That's SPHL stuff, man. That doesn't need to happen here. That's Iron League.
And to review, what we said from the beginning was, they may feel like they're playing against not just the other team, but they're playing against the officials. If that feeling persists, and if that kind of behavior continues, or that kind of interpretation continues, the Leafs have to turn the other cheek, because that's just a setup. If they react to the behavior, like if Marner had slashed Tkachuk when Tkachuk was doing that stuff, they both would have gone off for 2 minutes. Or worse, Marner would have gone off alone. So that's why
you got to even it up.
Not in this case. Like I said, my point is very simple. They should know that we know that they're getting jobbed when it comes to the officiating. We've explained that that Colin Campbell's son works for Florida, and we know that Colin Campbell has sent an email in protection of his son after performing an illegal act. We know that his father looked for an opportunity to lessen the punishment. So we know he's more than capable of doing something for his son. We just don't know if he's going to do it in this case, but we know he has done it. So to think of the officiating being a little bent, the opportunity's there. Evidence is there that Colin Campbell isn't beyond helping his son, who happens to be a Florida employee.
At the end of the day, like I said, if the Leafs play their game, I'm pretty confident that they can come out on top. So,
play the game. Play the game. Don't get drawn into the BS, because the Leafs aren't good at BS. So don't bother doing it. Just don't bother doing it. Clean checks. The boys have said it over and over again. We're here to play between the whistles. We're going to not engage in that other stuff. Yep. That's kind of strange coming from a guy whose career is like 3,000 or 3 million penalty minutes, who's their coach. But there it is.
Yeah.
Aaron, this was fun, and tomorrow's game is going to be very interesting, and we're going to get a chance to talk about tomorrow's game tomorrow.
Yeah.
So we'll be able to preview the game, and the game's going to be a little earlier. So good folks like you have a job who want to travel instead of sleep while they're traveling. We'll get a chance to watch the game, and the Leafs win the next game. That's all they got to think about. Just win the next game, and worry about after that later. Plenty of time.
One game at a time.
Do you think Stolarz will go in?
I'm
thinking no.
I'm thinking no. Bring up Hildeby, bring up whoever to put them back there. Bring up Murray. It's the Stanley Cup,
I might put Stolarz as the backup. I might do that. That's as far as I would go if I were the Leafs. I'm not saying that for any other reason than political reasons. Because if you start tomorrow, if you start him, there's going to be a lot of people saying stuff. They're going to be saying, "Yeah, that was all an act." He faked it. I saw his finger going down his throat. All that stuff's going to happen. Well, this was fun.
It really was, Frank.
What is your point?
I was just going to say, I wonder how much Kadri gets fined for Stolarz getting a concussion.
Somebody posted that the Leafs have been suspended more than any other team in the league. I find that hard to believe.
Yeah, well, you know what? I'll do some digging on that. We'll come back with the numbers tomorrow. Yeah, for sure. Okay,
thanks, buddy. Good to see you. Glad you enjoyed going to the game. And I hope you drank more beer outside of the arena, because we all know the price of beer in the arena.
Yes, sir.
So you have that to report, right?
Yes,
the beer is expensive in the arena. Have a great night, buddy.
Thanks, Frank.
I'm going to enjoy the hockey games tonight. To be honest, I'm hoping that Edmonton keeps going. They look good. All right, see you soon.
All right, take care.
All right, ciao.
Bye.